Hashtag paraphrase story script. John, how could you betray me like this? I can still hear myself screaming those words as if it happened yesterday, though more than 12 months have passed since then. I was 6 months into my pregnancy, trembling with rage and shock as I stood in our living room doorway. There he was, motionless with his arms folded, wearing that emotionless expression as though I was the one creating trouble. That instant made me understand that everything I believed we had created together was nothing but a deception. I'm Melissa Harper, currently 32 years old, and I'm raising my gorgeous 1-year-old daughter Emma as a single mother. My current life bears no resemblance to what I had imagined, yet in certain aspects, it's actually improved. Just over a year ago, an unexpected betrayal completely upended my existence, forcing me to discover how to continue forward while getting ready to bring my baby girl into this world. During those initial weeks following John's departure, I felt as though I was suffocating. Each time I shut my eyes, his face appeared before me, and I could hear him speaking those terrible words, "Melissa, I don't find you attractive anymore. Just look at yourself. You've completely given up on your appearance." These statements replayed in my thoughts, inflicting deeper wounds each time I recalled them. And Julia, who I considered my closest friend, couldn't even meet my gaze directly. I never confronted her face to face. I saw no purpose in it. I simply eliminated her from my existence as if she had never been part of it. I endured the remainder of my pregnancy in complete isolation, both emotionally and financially. John didn't simply abandon me, he also deserted Emma. Not one message, not a single dollar to assist us. My mother did everything she could to support me, but I could see it was breaking her heart to witness me in such a state. I displayed courage for everyone around me, but during the quiet nighttime hours, I would weep until exhaustion finally allowed me to sleep. Everything began when my friend Karen appeared at my doorstep, her complexion ashen and her face filled with unease. I immediately sensed something was terribly wrong just by looking at her. "Melissa, we need to have a conversation," she said as she entered my home. She paused briefly, seeming to search for the appropriate words. "I encountered John today with Julia. They were exiting a hotel together. I wished I could dismiss it, but they shared a kiss right there in the corridor." My stomach plummeted. For a brief moment, I couldn't comprehend what she was telling me. John, my spouse, and Julia, my closest friend. My pulse raced as the initial shock transformed into fury, and I bombarded Karen with every question that flooded my mind. Where? When? Are you certain? Yet I already understood she wouldn't fabricate something so serious. It felt as though my entire world had shifted off its foundation, and I couldn't regain my balance. I still questioned her. "What exactly do you mean about a hotel? Why would you be at a hotel? Are you absolutely certain? This is a grave allegation." My voice shook as I spoke, desperately hoping for some explanation that would make everything disappear. Karen nodded seriously, her eyes filled with compassion and remorse. My relatives were visiting and staying at that hotel. I was heading to their room when I spotted them, Melissa. I witnessed what happened. They didn't notice me, but they emerged from a room together and kissed right there in the hallway. She stopped, her voice becoming gentler. "I apologize deeply, but you deserve to know the truth." Hearing her repeat it so directly felt like a blow to my chest. My breathing became labored and tears burned my eyes as the full reality began to register. I collapsed onto the sofa, unable to catch my breath. My world was crumbling right there in my living room. The man I had placed my trust in, the man I was creating a family with, had been secretly meeting with my best friend. And Julia, she had been part of my life for so many years, the person I relied on during difficult times. How could they commit such a betrayal? How could they hurt me in this way, especially now when I was expecting our child? A tsunami of emotions overwhelmed me, rage, shame, devastation, all twisted together in a knot I couldn't untangle. Every recollection, every vow, every plan we had created suddenly seemed like a heartless prank. I couldn't stop questioning myself. Had I been oblivious? Was there something I had overlooked, or was I simply that disposable? The burden of it all weighed down on me, and for the first time ever, I truly felt like I was shattering. That evening, I waited for John's return home, my stomach tied in knots and my heart racing in my chest. When I heard his vehicle in the driveway, I experienced both anger and fear simultaneously. He entered as if it were an ordinary day, placing his keys on the counter and loosening his necktie. I didn't allow him to move past the kitchen. "How long has this been happening, John?" I asked, my voice shaking yet firm. He glanced up, appearing confused, then his expression became stern. "What are you referring to?" he responded, pretending not to understand. "Don't pretend ignorance with me," I snapped. "Karen witnessed you at the hotel with Julia. Now tell me the truth." His face contorted into a frown and he laughed dismissively. "Karen? That woman has lost her mind. She probably misinterpreted something, Melissa. You're allowing your imagination to spiral out of control. Nothing is happening." But his defensive tone and his inability to look me in the eye revealed everything I needed to know. I clenched my hands into fists, feeling my rage intensify with every word he uttered. "Don't you dare deceive me, John," I screamed, my voice cracking. "Karen isn't crazy, and you're well aware of that. She saw you with Julia exiting a hotel room. She witnessed you kissing her. So don't stand there and mock my intelligence." He threw his arms up in exasperation, pacing around the room as if he were the one being mistreated. "Melissa, you're making this far more significant than it is," he snapped. "Karen probably witnessed something harmless and twisted it in her mind. Julia and I are merely friends, nothing more." But his justification sounded pathetic, and the more he spoke, the more clearly I could see the guilt etched across his face. It seemed like he was attempting to talk his way out of the pit he had already created for himself. As he continued spouting his excuses, I suddenly felt a flutter in my stomach. Emma moved, as if reminding me of her presence, a tiny life relying on me amidst all this turmoil. For a second, my anger was replaced by such profound sadness that it nearly overwhelmed me. How could he do this to us, to her? I placed my hand on my belly instinctively, trying to stabilize myself. "Do you even have any concern for us, John?" I asked, my voice softer but filled with heartbreak. "Do you care about your daughter? She's inside here, and she can sense this. She can feel me falling apart because of your actions." His gaze briefly shifted to my stomach, but rather than softening, his expression remained cold and distant. "This has nothing to do with the baby," he stated flatly. "Don't make this more theatrical than necessary." In that instant, I realized I was truly alone. I felt tears forming, but refused to let them fall in his presence. "More theatrical?" I repeated, my voice trembling with shock. "I'm 6 months pregnant, John. 6 months. And you're telling me it's not theatrical that you're sneaking around with my best friend? That you've destroyed our family before our daughter even gets the chance to be born?" My voice grew louder with each word, my heartbreak transforming into blazing fury I could no longer contain. John sighed as though he was the one being bothered. "Melissa, you're exaggerating this situation," he said, shaking his head. "Julia and it just occurred, okay? I can't control my feelings. Things haven't been the same between us for some time, and, honestly, look at yourself, you've changed." He gestured toward me, his words dripping with disdain. "I no longer find you attractive, Melissa. I'm sorry, but that's the reality." John scoffed, shaking his head as if I were wasting his time. "God, Melissa, do you even listen to yourself?" he snapped, his voice ice cold. "You've been nothing but a whining, oversized child ever since becoming pregnant. Every single day it's something. Your back aches, your feet are swollen, you're exhausted. I understand you're pregnant, but you behave as though you're the first woman on earth to carry a child. It's pitiful." He looked me up and down, his expression twisting with revulsion. "And don't even begin with how you appear," he said, his voice dropping to a cruel sneer. "You're enormous, honestly, Melissa. You're starting to resemble a damn elephant waddling around here. It's embarrassing. You don't even attempt to look presentable anymore. It's just sweatpants and your greasy hair pulled back in that hideous bun. Julia, she's beautiful. She actually maintains herself and she's enjoyable to be around. You're just a moody, needy disaster, and I'm exhausted from pretending otherwise." He stared at me, his words hanging in the air like poison, and I felt my entire body become numb. I stood there, frozen, unable to find any words. How could he be so heartless? I had prepared myself for denial, for excuses, but not for this. The man who had once vowed to love me, who I thought was my partner, was standing before me, destroying me piece by piece. It wasn't sufficient that he had betrayed me, that he had discarded our marriage and our family for my best friend. Now he was humiliating me, stripping away every last shred of dignity I possessed. My throat constricted and I felt the sting of tears in my eyes, but I refused to cry before him. I didn't want to give him that satisfaction. "You don't even care," I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. "Not about me, not about Emma, not about anything we created together." He simply shrugged, his expression cold and indifferent. "I've moved forward, Melissa," he said flatly. "Perhaps you should do the same." His words struck me like a slap, and I realized in that moment that the man I once loved no longer existed. The following day, I packed whatever I could fit into several suitcases and departed. I couldn't remain in that house, surrounded by memories of a life that was no longer real. Every corner reminded me of him, of us, and it felt like the walls were closing in around me. My mother had offered weeks earlier for me to stay with her if I needed support during my pregnancy, and now I had no option but to accept her offer. When I arrived at her house, she was waiting at the door with open arms and a face full of concern. "Oh, sweetheart," she said gently, pulling me into an embrace. The moment I felt her hug, I broke down, sobbing into her shoulder like a child. It was the first time I had allowed myself to cry since Karen had told me the truth. "Everything will be all right, Melissa," she whispered, holding me firmly. "You and Emma will be fine. I'm here, and we'll face this together." For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I felt secure, broken, but secure. The days at my mother's house were calmer, but not less difficult. She did her best to lift my spirits, preparing my favorite dishes, sitting with me in the evenings, discussing everything except John. But the silence was overwhelming when she wasn't present. I spent hours staring at the nursery items I had brought with me, folding and refolding Emma's tiny garments, wondering how I would manage this alone. Occasionally, I'd find myself reaching for my phone, tempted to call John to yell at him, to demand how he could abandon us so effortlessly. But I stopped myself each time. What would be the point? He had made clear who he was, what mattered to him, and it wasn't me or his daughter. Instead, I focused all my attention on Emma, reminding myself that she was the reason I needed to remain strong. For her sake, I couldn't allow him to destroy me. After several weeks, it was as if John had completely vanished from my existence. No phone calls, no messages, no inquiries about the baby, nothing. It was as though he had erased us from his world, as if we had never existed for him. Initially, I checked my phone compulsively, half hoping, half dreading that he might contact me. But there was nothing. Eventually, I stopped checking. I told myself it was preferable this way. No reminders, no lingering false hopes, just silence. It was odd, though. The man who had been such a constant presence in my life for years now felt like a specter. When I moved into my mother's house, I packed away every photograph of him, every trace of him from my previous life, and placed them in a box I pushed into the back of the closet. Sometimes I'd find myself thinking about him, not with longing, but with bewilderment. How could someone simply vanish from their own child's life before it had even begun? It was as if John had never existed, but his absence was deafening, and it echoed in every moment I was left to face alone. Months went by, each one more challenging than the previous. Pregnancy was not kind to me. I was perpetually exhausted, and the stress of handling everything alone weighed heavily on me. My mother was a godsend, but there were still nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering how I had ended up in this situation. The thought of bringing Emma into the world without her father, without the life I had imagined for her, filled me with guilt. But every time I felt her move, it reminded me that she was my reason to continue. She was the only positive thing to emerge from this disaster. When Emma finally arrived, she was absolutely perfect. I'll never forget the moment I held her for the first time, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I felt this overwhelming surge of love wash over me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel broken. I felt complete. It didn't matter that John wasn't there. It didn't matter that he had chosen to walk away. In that moment, all that mattered was Emma, and she was mine, my beautiful, precious little girl. She was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every bit of pain. The first few weeks with Emma were chaotic. Between the late-night feedings and learning how to be a mother, I barely had time to think about anything else. She had the most gorgeous eyes, large and bright, full of curiosity, and when she looked at me, it felt like everything would be okay. My mother helped significantly, but I made sure to handle as much as I could on my own. I wanted to prove to myself, and perhaps even to John, though he was long gone, that I could manage this without him. Still, there were moments when loneliness crept in. I'd see fathers doting on their children at the grocery store or hear friends talk about their partners helping with nighttime feedings, and it hurt. But then I'd look at Emma, and all the sadness would fade. She was my world now, and every smile she gave me, every little coo, made everything worthwhile. I didn't need John to be happy. I had everything I needed right there in my arms. Weeks later, when life with Emma began to feel slightly more manageable, I decided to venture out to the shopping mall. My mother offered to watch Emma for a few hours so I could have some time to myself, something I hadn't experienced since before she was born. It felt strange leaving the house without her, but I knew I needed the break. Just walking through the brightly lit corridors, surrounded by people going about their lives, was a reminder that the world hadn't stopped turning, even when mine had felt like it had. I wandered aimlessly for a while, stopping to browse in a few baby stores, selecting a couple of outfits for Emma. I was just beginning to feel a sense of normalcy when I heard a voice call out my name. Melissa. I turned and my heart stopped. It was Julia. She looked different. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen, and there was no mistaking the slight protrusion of her stomach. Before I could react, she rushed toward me, her voice breaking. Melissa, I'm so sorry, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks as she grabbed my arm. I froze completely, caught off guard. Julia, the woman who had destroyed my life, was standing before me, crying like a child. She didn't seem like the confident, manipulative person I remembered. Her shoulders were hunched, her clothes wrinkled, and her hands shook as she wiped her face. I know I'm the last person you want to see, she sobbed, her words tumbling over each other, but I need to tell you everything. I didn't speak. I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, waiting for her to continue. John abandoned me, she choked out. He lost his job a few months after we got together, and things became terrible. He started gambling, drinking, and when I told him I was pregnant, he just left. He said he couldn't handle it. She covered her face, her body shaking with sobs. I don't know what to do, Melissa. I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. You didn't deserve any of it. She broke down right there in the middle of the mall, people glancing at us as they walked by, but I didn't care. I couldn't move. I just stared at her, a wave of mixed emotions flooding through me. Julia kept sobbing, her voice breaking as she pleaded with me. Please, Melissa, I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to forgive me. I was selfish and foolish, and I ruined everything. I wish I could undo it all. Please, I'm begging you. Her words hung in the air, but I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring at her, feeling an odd mixture of pity, anger, and satisfaction. For so long, I had dreamed of a moment like this, of her realizing the pain she had caused and begging for my forgiveness. But now that it was happening, I felt nothing, not even a flicker of the satisfaction I had expected. I looked at her one final time, her face streaked with tears, and without saying a word, I turned and walked away, leaving her there in the middle of the mall. When I returned home, as if the day hadn't already been surreal enough, I had a second surprise waiting for me. Sitting on the front steps, slouched like a man who had lost everything, was John. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. He looked so different, disheveled, exhausted, and reeking of alcohol. His hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled, and he barely resembled the man I used to know. He looked up as I approached, his eyes bloodshot and glazed. Melissa, he mumbled, struggling to stand. I needed to see you. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as a wave of anger surged through me. I couldn't believe this was happening, that after everything he had done, he had the audacity to show up here. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice sharp and unforgiving. He staggered slightly, leaning against the door frame. I'm sorry, he stammered. I love you, Melissa. I love Emma. Please let me come back. I'll fix everything, I swear I will. His voice cracked, but all I felt was disgust and a cold, biting clarity. He smelled of alcohol so strongly that it hit me before I could even respond. Sorry, I repeated, my voice thick with disbelief. You're sorry? You left us, without a second thought, and now you're here, smelling like a tavern, talking about being sorry and loving us. John ran a hand through his disheveled hair, his shoulders slumping like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. I know, Melissa, he said, his voice cracking. I know I've messed up. I've lost everything, you, Emma, my job, my money. I've been such a fool, and I can't stop thinking about what I threw away. I love you. I love Emma. I do. Please just give me a chance to make it right. For a moment, I just stared at him, my emotions a storm of anger, pity, and something I couldn't quite identify. This was the man I had once built my world around, the father of my child, now reduced to this broken shell. You love us, I said, my voice trembling. Where was that love when I was 6 months pregnant and you walked out on me? Where was it when Emma was born and I was in the hospital alone? You abandoned us, John. You don't get to show up now and play the victim. He staggered slightly, holding onto the door frame for support. I know, he whispered, tears welling up in his bloodshot eyes. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I've changed, Melissa. I can change. Please just let me be part of Emma's life. I'll do anything. I felt a lump rise in my throat as I watched him fall apart. A part of me wanted to believe him, to reach out and offer some kind of comfort to the man I had once loved so deeply. But the memory of all the pain he had caused, all the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering how I would do this alone, kept me grounded. No, John, I said finally, my voice steady but heavy with emotion. You're not part of my life anymore. Emma and we're better off without you. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. He broke down, his sobs quiet but heart-wrenching, and for a brief moment, I felt sorry for him. But I knew I had to stay strong for myself and for Emma. Without another word, I stepped past him, unlocked the door, and closed it behind me, leaving him outside in the darkness. Inside, I leaned against the door, the weight of the day finally hitting me. In one day, both people who had nearly destroyed my life, John and Julia, had shown up, broken and ruined by their own choices. I didn't have to lift a finger for it to happen. They had done it to themselves, consumed by the same selfishness and deceit that had shattered my world over a year ago. I thought back to everything I had been through, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights wondering how I would raise Emma on my own. Through it all, I had lived my life with dignity, focusing on my daughter and rebuilding my own sense of worth. And now here I was, standing tall while the people who once tore me down were left to face the wreckage of their actions. I climbed the stairs quietly and peeked into Emma's room. She was fast asleep, her tiny face peaceful and perfect in the soft glow of the nightlight. I leaned down and kissed her forehead, feeling a surge of gratitude and love. This was my life now, and it was going to be beautiful. Hello there. Did you enjoy the story? If you did, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Make sure you won't miss any more amazing stories we share here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.